Okay, welcome everyone again. I'll give you a brief introduction about myself for this webinar, Augmented Reality and Visual Search for the Service Business. What does it entail? My name is Barry Braster. I'll be your host today. I'm the Sales Director of Technical Documentation Services at Etteplan, as it's pronounced in Finland, where our headquarters are. I've been with the company for 15 years, and well, you can read my background there, but quite a long time in the field of technical documentation, if I say so myself. Making sure that you understand how it works today. So for the next 45 minutes, maybe a little less, I'll be talking to you about today's topic. The audio that is provided is usually through your PC speakers, or you can simply call in. You've received the information for that. Again, as I mentioned, the webinar will be recorded, and in case you need to request a link afterwards or forward that to anyone, then barry.braster@etteplan.com is the email to send it to. But if you have registered, you will automatically receive a link to the recording. We're all in listening only mode, except of course myself. You can ask questions, but I will be able to answer them usually towards the end. In case or unless I see some of these questions during the webinar itself that you know, and I have some time, then I will also try to answer them. All right, here we go. Brief background about Etteplan. Specialist in industrial equipment engineering and technical documentation solutions and services. Been around since '83. About 2,200 designers currently, of which about 450 folks are in the documentation field. I'm not sure if some of you have heard, but yesterday we grew with another 35 technical documentation specialists as we acquired the German/Dutch-based company Arvato. And they're in the technical documentation field, and you can read more about that particular press release on the website etteplan.com under the stock exchange news. That also means that we are publicly listed company, offices in Finland, Sweden, the Netherlands, Denmark, USA, and 3 offices with about 220 folks in China. Some of the customers that we work for, quite a few, as you can hopefully see, but they represent a very broad industry. What this also means is that, excuse me, is that the aerospace is represented, defense is represented, medical, finance, consumer electronics, so basically anything between. And that also means that if you have a technical documentation requirement, we have a lot of customers asking us for our help. The offering that we then provide is actually based on whatever is needed by our customers. So we can provide capacity in the form of people and their skills in case of peak hours. And if they're not peak hours, so off-peak hours, we will be able to take people back, to helping companies, advise them, consult them on which methods will give you most cost and quality efficiency in technical documentation, and also provide the technologies that belong with it. So content management systems. We work with a lot of partners in that regard. State-of-the-art tools, etc., etc. Standardization, I think, is a really big aspect here, but I'll discuss it in a moment on this particular webinar. And then the last part is that we have customers that simply outsource some or all of the technical documentation functions to Etteplan, and then not only are we able to derive the quality up and cost down, but we also will be able to do that by offshoring some of the tech doc activities to our colleagues in China, as an example. So that's a little bit about the model. Now, technical documentation is something we'll be discussing today with regards to augmented reality. I'm sure you have seen these augmented reality demos around the world. It's really starting to come up now in the last couple of years. But the question, of course, is what can we do with augmented reality in the service/maintenance industry? I'll start answering that question, what does it entail, by going first to the problem definition of, or at least the requirements for technical documentation in the service business. There's of course the safety and regulations, as you can see on the left top. What are the requirements that we have to comply with? EU directives, FDA, contractual regulations, all of those types of requirements require you to provide extra information with your products to your end users. In this case, they could be field service engineers or mechanics. The EU directive for the machinery directive, for instance, states that you need to provide a manual in the language of the country to which you export, and that manual, of course, is necessary. Why? Because of safety aspects. But of course, knowing that, we of course need to do that, or at least need to try to do that at the lowest possible cost. The quality of the documentation needs to be very high, because these days are regarded more and more as an integral part of your product. As a matter of fact, without high quality documentation, your service engineers will not be really able to do a good job on keeping the downtime to a minimum level when performing maintenance tasks. And when they perform these maintenance tasks, they need to be quick and easy in order to indeed, like I said, minimize the downtime. Smart shipping, of course, so that means that whenever your products are ready to be shipped, the documentation or information should be shipped together with the product. What we don't want, of course, is that whenever a product is done, that someone says, by the way, guys, we still need a manual. Did anyone write one? And by the way, we need it in 20 languages. So, and to the last part is being future-proof with your content. So in case you do want your content to be published through technologies like augmented reality or visual search, then you need to make sure that it's set up, that it's structured the way it should be structured in order to be able to publish to technologies like augmented reality. If we start with the service industry itself, right? So what's the need in the service industry? Well, Henry Ford once said it, that a business devoted to the service will only have to worry about profits, because they will be embarrassingly large. However, if we then look at a survey that Deloitte did a couple of years ago, that showed that 35 to 50% of a service engineer's time goes into finding and understanding the maintenance information at hand, then if we realize how many service engineers there are, as a matter of fact, there was a study done a couple of years ago by a major medical slash healthcare manufacturer, and they have about 10,000 field service engineers. Now, if you have 5 or 10 or 20, and 35 to 50% of their time goes into not being able to work with the documentation that you give to them in order to do their jobs efficiently, then there's still an issue, let alone for these 10,000 field service engineers, right? So that basically also means is that providing your end user with documentation purely from a regulatory point of view is not enough. It needs to meet certain standards so that you are able to provide your mechanical engineers, your service providers, your field service engineers with the right service information at the right time whenever he or she needs it. And then what are the other challenges? Because that is just the cost of service. But if we then look at documentation, and we see there's version management, and we have to maintain and update it, then we have to provide, different types of outputs to web, to PDF, to, and meeting all these safety requirements, etc., etc. And then there's a lot more involved than just meeting the regulatory requirements, and then still keep the cost down, of course. So the idea is that we create a technical documentation platform that is not only going to allow us to create these types of cost savings, but like I just said, it needs to be the highest quality cost, lowest risks, etc., etc. So that the technical documentation literally goes out the door, is shipped, and the cost then is in essence also goes down as soon as a product is being added to the market. So implementing then a global platform for technical documentation, and all of this is going to lead up to being able to publish to augmented reality. So there's competent authors and illustrators. There's the use of single sourcing, XML, / topic-based authoring, those types of technologies, standardization, ways of working, and of course simplifying your content. What that will do, well, it will give you the efficiency, the future safe, high quality technical information that you want to be looking for, that you want to be able to publish. Very important in that respect is that we realize that we need to have a content strategy. If you do not have one, you need to get one. If you do have one, then does it start with agreeing what information is needed by your end user in the first place? Then are you applying universal standards for documentation? And I'll talk more about that in a moment. And only then, and you can see that step number 4, only then you're going to start using tooling to help you meet your needs. Because tooling is subject to your ultimate goal. Tooling is not the goal itself. It's not okay to to buy a content management system and then think you're doing great. You first need to, garbage in, garbage out, they sometimes say, but you first need to really figure out for your organization what information is needed at first and what is it then that the other steps that I need to do in order to be able to finally publish and give that information to your end user. Well, we start by simplifying our content. There's a standard that's called Simplified Technical English or Controlled Language. There's a couple of standards out there. It basically means that we need to apply the 3 C's to our content. Clarity, consistency, and also writing concise, so short and to the point. Because the more clear you are to your end user, the more they will understand you, and the better they understand you, well, that in a lot of cases means that they don't even have to call for a maintenance person. In that regard, you can really say that the best service is really not having to provide any service at all, right? Maintenance, that is. So the approach there is that you apply simplified English writing rules, that you basically get conciseness on the terminology that you're using. One word can only have one meaning. That you apply a certain tone of voice so that you make content more engaging. That everyone is using the same consistent terminology, etc., etc. And then you will bring those costs down 30 to actually sometimes 40%. It will be more safer and efficient to use the content. But also less text means less to translate, means less to print, etc. As a matter of fact, we've done a survey a little while ago, and it showed that the average content of a manual was reduced by 40% just by applying the simplification process. We have a tool actually that's called HyperSTE. It's content optimization software. What it really does is it sits on top of your authoring environment, and it checks your content to make sure that everyone is applying the simplified English rules. Everyone is writing according to the same terminology, and basically make sure that everything is going great from the simplification point of view. We give training as well in that regard, so we train authors on how to apply this particular standard with many benefits as a result. So that's the content. So if we don't simplify the content, well, of course, people, service engineers that cannot understand and read the information are going to be confused. They're going to be frustrated. From a translation point of view, if the source is bad, you can't expect the translation to be good. So if you say turn off engines not required, well, that could mean turn off the engines that are not required, but it could also mean that turning off the engines is not required at all. If you say the woman hits the man using a hammer, it could be that both could actually be holding the hammer in this particular sentence. So if you're going to translate that in over 20 different languages, how can you then ensure that the quality of the language that you translated to actually is up there and has the correct meaning? Well, if the source is unclear, the translation will be even less clear, or even wrong, will be completely misinterpreted. And that, of course, could mean there's a safety risk, not only for your employees, your partners, but actually for the folks that are using the content. In-field equipment damage, potential for legal liabilities, etc., etc. In the end, that will result in bad customer service. So that's on the text side, but we would apply the same on the illustration side. And not just creating these types of simplified drawings, So what we would do is we would take the source cat data, we would then start to simplify and we would start to structure these illustrations. So we would apply the single sourcing principle that I'll discuss in a moment to these illustrations so that you in this case would get basically a spaghetti bowl of SVG files with all different kinds of configurations, and that will allow you to publish to these different types of configurations. It's not just a simplification process, but also the structuring process. Structuring your content like you're doing in XML using standards like DITA and S1000D, but apply the exact same principle to your illustrations. The benefit there is that, well, single sourcing. So one time there's an update, now it's updated in all these different publications. Of course, there's a PDF file, you need to recreate that PDF file, but really the same principle applies there. What's also important to know is the simplification process. By simplifying this, we help to solve three problems. Number one, the engineers are now happy to provide us with their data because it doesn't no longer contain the IP / intellectual property sensitive information. Number two is through the simplification we actually allow a lot more reuse of these types of illustrations, which of course will mean less time for illustrators and therefore less cost. And thirdly, one step back, thirdly is that by simplification we actually, it allows us to communicate highly technical information in a much easier and understandable way to our end users. Just a second. Yeah, it says here that people can hear me. I'm hearing Rob saying that he's not getting any audio, but I believe you should be able to get some. Rob, maybe I just fell out there. In case anyone else of you has a problem with the audio, please also let me know in the question box. So before, that means if we have the text on the left and we have photos on the right, by the way, why not use photos? I mean, the good thing about photos is that you are able to take them quick, easy, and add them to your document. So that's great. The bad thing about them is that number one, they have a lot of redundant information. Number two is that if anything gets updated, well, you have to need to take a new picture. And if you have to do that a lot of times, then the quickness of taking that picture in the beginning will no longer apply. And thirdly, your end users will very likely not have color printers. And if they have a black and white printer and they want to just bring the papers with them, well, then there is an issue there because the photo will no longer be very visible on black and white if you basically use black and white as a printing default. So that's not something that you should be doing. Now on the left we see some text, and if we then simplify both of these text as well as illustrations, then you see what we're looking at here. So there's simplified text on the left. On the right there is the simplified illustrations. It's much clearer, much more concise, much more reuse in your translation memory as well, and much easier to understand, again, by your end user. Now if we then thirdly apply the principle of single sourcing, so next to simplification of the content we also apply single sourcing and topic-based authoring. That will mean there's a lot of reuse. Also, it's much easier to manage this content in a content management system, in this common source database here. But also it makes information much faster to retrieve because you're no longer necessarily working with PDF files or printed manuals, making information much more interactive and dealing with topic-based information so that you only look for a particular topic rather than an entire manual will actually make information much faster to retrieve. The other benefit is that you'll be able to publish your content to multiple publication formats. Still PDF, still print where required, but also make information interactively available. And the standards that are out there in order to allow you to do that are DITA and S1000D. We've done similar, well, we actually have done webinars about those topics as well that you probably can find whenever you get the YouTube link that we'll send out. But there's a lot of, if you Google DITA and S1000D, I'm sure most of you are familiar with those types of standards. Now, the next thing that I want to show you actually is, well, very briefly before I actually go into the demonstration of augmented reality, is that if you look at the IT framework that you need in order to allow you to go there, is that you have written content checked for simplified English content. You have illustrated content that is now structured according to the simplified technical illustration methods, so the use of 3D, SVG, etc. This is the method that I just explained. Having all of that content managed and stored in your content management system, where you can add parts data, metadata, etc., and then being able to interactively publish that content through an online distribution server to a viewer that I'm about to show you, to parts catalogs, etc., and even having it linked to external systems like ERPs, etc. All of these things are then allowed and possible. So that's being said, I briefly want to give you a short demo and then discuss a little bit about the publication process. Firstly, what I want to do is show you that whatever I just showed you in theory, what that makes it possible for information to be retrieved in practice. Imagine this. Imagine I am a field service engineer and I want to maintain a particular, as a matter of fact, the example I'm going to show you is for a flight simulation system. And what we're looking at right now is a viewer, and as a service engineer I'm able to use certain credentials that allows me to log into the content management system. So this is kind of like a helicopter view over the content management system, and I now have three ways of looking up the information that I need. I can scan the QR code of the system that I'm looking at. I can do a textual search if I need to, or I simply look at the Linux, for instance, made by Electa, or I simply do a visual search until I get to the particular device that I'm at. Whenever you see a little asterisk symbol here, it means that the content has already been downloaded locally on my, in this case, Windows environment, but we also support iPad and so iOS by Apple as well as Android. And by clicking on it, I now get into the content for this particular device, this beautiful flight simulation system here. Now, what's so powerful about the use of visual, so illustrations that are structured and simplified is that it allows me to do a visual search. So that means that these illustrations, these are all different layers that I can click on. By just clicking on these aspects, I'm being told what the name of the part is, for instance. Well, that will already solve one problem. For instance, the Deloitte survey I mentioned earlier, where one of the issues was is that one particular component had 20 different names. So that made it a lot harder for a service engineer to find that particular component because it was called 20 different things. But for me to do a visual search now, it's just like, okay, well, this is the part that I need more information on, the motion and bridge cabinet. I don't even care what they're called. I point at them, this is what I need more information on. And I see that there's different types of information available normally. So there's operation, troubleshooting, safety, training, and parts. And in this case, the only thing that is highlighted is maintenance. So only maintenance information is available for this particular part. I click on battery charger, and I'm now going into a procedure that tells me, okay, I need to check the eco mode, which can be part of the troubleshooting aspect as well. So it says here, in simplified English, using these simplified illustrations, I need to use the Phoenix multi-control panel to operate the Phoenix multi-compact remote. Number one, connect the RJ45 connector. Number two, set the position 4 of the dip switch A to on. Very good. Now you can see that through the use of these standards, I am able to very quickly, just with a couple of clicks, get to the information that I need, rather than having to scroll through, either a PDF file, or if I have it in my hands, it would probably take me, as a matter of fact, it's been proven that it's going to take me a lot longer, to just try to find the maintenance procedure that belongs to this. So because it's not textual but visual search, it allowed me to just with a couple of clicks, get exactly to the maintenance procedure I needed to know. Moreover, what's important to see is that I can actually order parts straight from here. Now, this can be, in this case, sales@titopress.com, but in case I have an ERP system linked to it, it will actually have all the data already in there, and you're able to order straight from there. However, in addition, from a practical point of view, what we've seen is that whenever we go to the factories and we look at the end users of the manuals that we write, we see that, number one, providing an engineer with a 500 or 1500 page manual isn't really engaging for them to actually open it and look up the information, right? But secondly, if they actually do open it up and they do work with it, we see these notes that they put in. And do those notes ever come back to our technical authors? Well, the answer is no, they don't. So we were able to just provide a feedback button. The feedback button allows me to basically say, look, this is about this procedure. The goal of it and the content is I don't agree with it. It actually needs to say this, or this is the screw that I looked for, but it was in color blue but red, whatever. Then that's the type of feedback that then eventually gets back to the author, and he's able to update and maintain it. And if the process is done the correct way, then within a day or sometimes a few days, that means that the latest information is now updated, and your service engineer in a remote country can now get the latest information. You simply would open up the viewer, it would tell him, hey, your content has been updated, you want to download the latest and greatest? Yes, I do, and you have the latest information with you. So this is just showing you the visual search aspect that allows you to do that. Now, I'll show you a little bit more about the theory. What I want to do now is show how this can also be used in augmented reality. So I'll click out of this and I'll show you a video that's also available on YouTube. And what this means is that, and I'll pause it whenever we get there, is that right now we're holding an iPad in front of a circuit board, the exact same circuit board that was available in that bridge cabinet. But through augmented reality technology, it can actually recognize the circuit board, and through the connection to the content management system, it's able to recognize certain aspects and publish the same content, but rather than having just a dynamic view, this is an interactive dynamic view in the form of augmented reality. So it recognizes certain aspect, and remember we just saw check eco mode. Well, it now actually puts that procedure actually on top of the actual circuit board. And what happens is, if I click on it, I'm now being told to connect the RJ45 connector. So I'm still being told the procedure, but I'm actually showing the procedure through augmented reality. So what that means is that I take the 3D out of the CMS and I publish it this particular way. And I can go back and forth between different animations. So set the position 2 of the dip switch to off. Okay, that's where that is. Where's the switch? Set it to on. The switch is right here. Very good. Okay, the eco mode indicator flashes, I see, and now I can go back. If I click on bolt right here, I'm being told to remove the bolt, connect the wire, replace the bolt. There you go. It tells me exactly what it is that I need to learn. So there you go. So what does that mean in practice, right? So I'll jump back to the presentation here. Well, it's the publication process. So we are applying single source publishing, but we're simply using augmented reality as a different type of publication process. So where you have a style sheet for a PDF, you have a certain interactive style sheet for the HyperSys viewer that I showed you. You also have a style sheet for augmented reality. Now, in this case, again, to show you, this was the interactive viewer in HyperSys. Set the position 2 of the dip switch A to on, as you can see right here. And just to highlight, that's how it's looking here. This is the PDF version, by the way. Same content. But through augmented reality, and this is augmented reality is the same platform, but an iPhone in this case, I'm being told set the position to the dip switch to on, and I'm actually now using 3D and having these types of buttons here that allow me to go back and forth between procedures. Set the position to the dip switch on. So it's text-wise, but it's the same goes for illustrations. So if we use, for instance, Illustrator for the visual aspect, and number two, we link that file then to the visual search. We add number three, metadata textually to that part, to the motion and bridge cabinets, so that whenever someone looks for motion and bridge cabinets or clicks on the motion and bridge cabinets, it's then linked to a procedure as well as to an illustration. And that will allow us for that publication structure to come into place. See right here how it is all linked to one another. And that means in the publication form itself is that whenever I clicked on that motion and bridge cabinet, it is then linked to that particular procedure as well as these illustrations. But the same would apply in augmented reality, that it wouldn't grab an illustration, it would simply take a 3D animation, and through augmented reality software it is able to recognize it, take that animation and publish it exactly where you told it to be published at. You can see here how the illustrations then are linked. So again, there's a template for a result, there's another template for another result. So that's kind of the idea, that whenever we look at a little bit into the detail here, but showing you that a graphic file, you know, whenever we have this particular file is an SVG file, then in the publication process that would be the TEC02 SVG file that would then be linked to this particular procedure, etc., etc. And there you have it. That was the conclusion of today's webinar. You can request a brochure about this. You can simply visit our website atteplan.com or technical documentation service.services. When we're talking more about technical documentation in general, atteplan.com also gives you information on our engineering services. Any questions you're also able to address to me personally, barry.braster@atteplan.com. And simply ask us how we can help you, or in case you have any further questions, be more than happy to help you out there. Now that leaves for the Q&A session to open up. Let me make sure that I have that enabled. Ooh, there's quite a few questions coming in. Just a second, please. Okay, one of the questions, here we go, is when we say visual search. When we say visual search, do you really mean scan? Because it's manual, is there a way a service engineer could use a mobile device to take a picture and then to search based on that image upload to find the part? That's a really good question. In theory, that's actually possible. However, you then need to it's basically turning things around. Theoretically, you can do that. However, it would require certain technologies to be put in place so that it can actually recognize the aspects. I mean, if you're standing in front of a door and it's dark and you're taking a picture, then it may not be that useful. So that's something that is a very interesting question, but I'm unfortunately not able to answer how that would work. However, the visual search, what we mean with that is that you're looking at something and you want to get more information on it, and then by simply clicking on the part, if you're doing a visual search rather than looking for a bridge cabinet textually, you're actually having the device 3D or 2D in front of you and being able to navigate that way. Then the next question is, do I really need to extend my Oh, there we go. That's much easier now. Okay, the next question. When will augmented reality support easy and effective documentation, or will it reduce the content and support more visual understanding? And by Rahika, thank you for that question. It will do both. Um, it will, in essence, it will make sure that the information, the maintenance information that belongs with a product is going to be published in a way where it's much easier and faster to understand. That means that it's because of that, because it's much more simplified that way, it will make the knowledge transfer better. It's great for e-learning, but it will, in the essence, make documentation much more effective. And when I talk about documentation, I'm talking about maintenance information. And it's just in the end, in the beginning, you may still be required to publish it as a PDF slash paper next to augmented reality, but in the end, it will probably, in a couple of years' time, of course, will probably replace it, and then it will do most. Makes it more easier, more effective, and in the end, it can reduce the content and support more visual understanding. So we'll do both. What augmented reality software do you use? As Adam is asking. It's a good question. We use several types of software. What's important for us is that this software allows us to use standards like S1000D and DITA. And whichever software provider doesn't do that, we cannot work with. So that means is that it's not so much the software that you need to buy, it is the technology and the content strategy that is behind it. Because it's such a new field still, relatively, augmented reality software, is that you'll see a lot of companies now trying this out. You see a lot of these companies in the end fail, and you see a couple of good ones do really well, but you don't therefore, because it's so young, you don't want to depend on one particular provider. And by sticking with universal standards for your content, that will allow you to switch providers whenever they are no longer meeting your needs. It's the exact same thing that we're doing. Effective use of augmented reality in the field requires good tracking. Which tracking technologies do you use? Again, that's the SDKs. That's Greg. I would say ask me that question offline. I can provide you with a little bit more info of that because that's actually more of an IT field, and I would like to put you in touch with one of our IT folks in order to get that question answered for you. Another question is, let me see, our clients typically have isolated LANs that are not connected to the internet. Can the augmented reality system that you demonstrated be implemented in a local system? Yes, it can. As a matter of fact, whatever I just showed you is downloaded locally. We have customers in the mining field. We also have them in the medical field. And if you're in an operating room, you are not allowed to have wireless in there for obvious reasons. So what you would then do is whenever you have the information at hand of the customer that you're going to, you would then download the information that you may need, and then you would be able to work offline with that information locally. Another question. Let me see, are these tools available only through our service offering, or are you providing these tools to other service providers? That's Louis. Well, Louis, again, we are not a tool provider. We are not a augmented reality software tool provider. We work with different providers in that regard, just like we work with different providers in the field of content management or XML authoring. But what we do is we do the service. So we either help you create augmented reality publication as a service, or we advise you which tools to use so that you are able to do them yourself. And then the last question is again by Louis, is are there any specific customer prospects that have implemented the virtual reality solution? Just to make sure, Lou, virtual reality is different than augmented reality, as you probably know. Augmented is actually when you're augmenting a reality on top of the reality. With virtual reality, like I just showed you, with virtual reality, you're actually holding glasses in front of you, and you don't see any reality anymore. You're literally in an environment that is virtual. We have done some virtual demos, so it's high on the list of R&D with us. So virtual reality we're kind of looking at, and we're currently looking at some of our existing customers. Usually our customers are partners for the last 10, 20, 30 years, customers that we're working with for a long time, to see how content can actually be published to augmented reality. However, it's important that you have these four stakeholders in place. Number one, XML, so data S1000D. Number two, simplified English content, because you still need to be able to give people instructions. That also makes it easier whenever you need voice to also publish using voice technology. And then thirdly, the simplified illustration methodology is basically taking a 3D CAD drawing, simplifying it, structuring it in CMS so that you can publish the content dynamically in the form of, well, an animation in the case of augmented reality. Okay, I think that, oh, is there a recorded version available? Bob had a bad internet connection. Sorry, Bob. Yes, there is. I will send within the day or so, I will send a link to everyone who has registered, and give you the link to our YouTube page where this recording will be made available. So, all right. I think we are all out of questions here. Hopefully that was very useful for you. I'd like to thank you all for attending, and we may do another webinar this year, but if not, then we'll do a whole series again. I think this was the 8th one we did this year, so we'll do a whole series again, and well, keep minding our website, and we'll also send out emails, of course, with any next webinar that we will do. For now, it leaves me to say thank you all very much for attending, and have a good day. Bye-bye.